In this lecture, we will learn how to create a physical volume, a volume group, logical volume, create a file system, and mount the file system. Let's get started and let's create a physical volume. Let me bring up my terminal. First command we're going to run is lsblk. This will show us what disks we have added. As you can see right here, it shows we have SDB disk. It's 105 megabytes. We also have SDC disk, which is 50 megabytes. And these are the ones that are available. So we will start with SDB and we will try to create a physical volume for SDB disk. To create a physical volume, the command is pvcreate. And then you type in dev SDB, or whatever disk you have added, you will type in that disk name here. In my case, it's /dev/SDB. Hit enter. Now you'll get a message, physical volume /dev/SDB successfully created. Now let's run a command pvs. As you can see, I have two PVs in here. One is /dev/SDA2 and the other one is /dev/SDB, which we just added. And if you see right here, it will show you 105 megabytes and 105 megabytes are free. So the PV has been created and we have free 105 megabytes available. This is how you can create a physical volume. Now we will create a volume group. Let me bring up my terminal and we'll create a volume group here. To check the existing volume groups, we will type in the vgs command. As you can see, currently we have one VG, which is the volume group called CentOS, and there is no free space on it. Now we will create a volume group with the SDB disk. So the command is pvcreate, which is volume group create, and we'll call it test_VG, and then we will mention our disk that we added, which is SDB. We have already created a physical volume, and that is /dev/SDB, and then hit enter. Then we will get a message, volume group test_VG successfully created. If we run a VGS command again, it will show us not only we have CentOS volume group, now we also have test_VG volume group that we just created. And currently it has 104 megabytes of disk space available. We can also run another command, which is vg display, and it will give us a lot more information about what we have as far as volume groups are concerned. It gives you a lot more information on what you have available. And now we will create a logical volume, then we will create a file system on it, and then we will mount it. So let's get started. Let me bring up my terminal. Let me run a VGS command. As you can see, I have two VGs in here, CentOS and test_VG. And this is the one we're going to use, which has 104 megabytes of disk space available. To get started, we will run the command lvcreate and then -n. Then we can type in the name. We will call it example_LV. That's the name of our logical volume. -L, and then we can mention the disk space we want to give it. That is 50 megabytes. And then we will mention the volume group, test_VG, hit enter. Now we're getting a message, rounding up size to full physical extent, 52 megabytes, logical volume example_LV created. So at this point, our logical volume has been created. If we run a lvs command, it will show us what logical volumes we currently have. Right here is the example_LV, and the volume group is test_VG, and this is what we created, 52 megabytes, and that's the logical volume we just created. Now what we need to do is we need to create a file system. To create a file system, there are many ways to create it. One we will use is makefs.ext3, or whatever file system you're trying to make. For example, if you're trying to make extended 4, then you would type in ext4. In our case, it's .ext3, and that's what we will use. And then you mention /dev and then you mention your volume group, and then the logical volume, which is example_lv, and then hit enter. You have created an ext3 file system. Once you've created a file system, the next step is we will create a directory where we will mount this logical volume. So currently I'm in a directory called tmp, and this is where I will create a directory called example. So make dir example, hit enter. Let's do an ls. As you can see, example directory has been created, and this is where we will mount it. To mount it, you just run mount command /dev, location of your volume group, which is test_vg, and then example_lv, which is our logical volume. And then we will mention where we are mounting it, which is /tmp/example directory that we just created. Hit enter. Now that we have mounted our logical volume, we can check with df-h command. And if you see right here, the last line, /dev mapper test_vg-example_lv, this is the logical volume we just mounted, and it's been mounted to /temp/example. Now, important thing to remember is, even though we have created a logical volume, we have created a file system on it, and we have mounted it, it's still not permanent. If you reboot your system, this will disappear. To make it permanent, you need to add this entry in etc/fs tab. So vi etc/fs tab, press O to add another line, and then type in /dev /mapper /test_vg-example_lv. And then we will mention the mount point, which is /tmp/example. And then we will mention the file system, which in our case is ext3. And then we'll type in defaults. And right here, if you want to make it read write, then you type in 1, 2, hit escape, and then let's save and quit this file. Just to show it to you again, let's cat that file again, cat etc/fs tab. And if you see this line, the last line right here, this is the fs tab entry that we've just created. And this is just an example. You will create your line depending on what you want. But that's how you can create a physical volume, volume group, and a logical volume, and then create a file system, and then you mount it. To make it permanent, you add this line in etc/fs tab file, so when you reboot your system, your mount point still exists. I hope you learned something useful in this lecture as well, and I'll see you in the next one.